Humans unknowingly bully a Deathworlder in Galactic jail. Instantly regret it. This is the Galactic Correctional Complex, a massive prison floating in the emptiness of space. It is home to the most dangerous criminals across the galaxy, creatures feared for their strength, intelligence, or sheer cruelty. Among the inmates, survival is a constant battle. Today, a new prisoner arrives. Kara, a human, steps off a transport ship and into the metallic halls of the facility. Her small frame is barely noticeable among the towering alien guards escorting her. They treat her with mild amusement, whispering about how humans are soft and fragile. A Deathworlder? Really? This one looks like she couldn't lift a ration pack. One of the guards scoffs. The other chuckles in agreement. Earth must be losing its edge if this is what they're sending us. Kara says nothing. Her eyes scan the alien faces behind the glowing force fields. Prisoners from countless worlds glare at her, sizing her up, their expressions ranging from curiosity to hunger. Whispers ripple through the crowd. A human? Haven't seen one of those in years. They always break fast. Let's see how long this one lasts. But Kara doesn't flinch. Her calm, steady demeanor only fuels their mockery. She is escorted to her cell, and as the guards activate the force field, a holographic warden materializes in front of her. Director Vorthal, a cold and calculating AI, speaks with a tone devoid of emotion. Inmate 49213. Species: human. Origin: Class 13, Deathworld Earth. Despite the reputation of your kind, I see no indication that you'll fare any better than the others here. Kara glances at the warden briefly, but remains silent. Her lack of reaction seems to irritate the AI. Let's see if you survive the week, Vorthal adds coldly before vanishing. Hours later, Kara steps into the common area, a vast open space teeming with activity. Inmates of every size and form mill about, their eyes turning to the human. The room buzzes with taunts and laughter. What's that? A new pet for the guards. She's too small to last here. Earthlings are all talk. Nothing special about them. From across the room, a group of inmates watches her closely. The leader, Gronak, is a towering reptilian brute with gleaming scales and muscles that ripple as he moves. Beside him stands Zyther, a wiry creature with glowing veins, and Yaksa, an arachnid-like being whose sharp limbs twitch in anticipation. That's a Deathworlder? Gronak sneers, loud enough for the room to hear. Looks more like a walking meal. Zyther chuckles, his glowing eyes narrowing. Won't take much to crack that one. She'll scream like the others, Yaksa adds, clicking her mandibles. The group moves toward Kara, cutting through the crowd with ease. Gronak steps directly in front of her, his towering shadow casting her in darkness. He leans down, flashing sharp teeth. What's wrong, human? Feeling small yet? You're in our world now. Kara doesn't respond immediately. She looks at him, her expression unreadable, then lets her eyes flick over his companions. Calmly, she speaks. Your world, huh? Looks poorly managed. The room erupts into laughter, some amused, some shocked. Gronak's grin falters, replaced by a growl. You've got a mouth on you. Let's see how long you keep it. Kara doesn't flinch. Her calm tone cuts through the noise again. Careful what you wish for. She steps around him without another word, leaving him and his group staring after her. Other inmates exchange glances, whispers spreading rapidly. This quiet human has everyone curious. Kara sits in her dimly lit cell, her back against the cold wall. The faint hum of the force field is the only sound. Outside, the distant murmurs of alien voices filter through, but Kara remains silent, her expression calm. For most, this would be a moment of fear or anxiety, but not for her. She has seen worse, much worse. On Earth, her home planet, survival is not a luxury. It is a necessity. Earth, classified as a death world, is a place where life constantly fights against extinction. The environment is unforgiving. The predators are relentless. And the planet itself? Brutal. Memories flicker in her mind. Massive storms battering her shelter, wild animals stalking her every move, and volcanic eruptions forcing her to relocate time and again. Each challenge tested her strength, her adaptability, and her ability to endure when others would have crumbled. These experiences shaped her into someone who never gives in, someone who always finds a way. The alien guards outside her cell laugh as they pass by, their voices dripping with mockery. You hear about the new one? Human, soft and slow. Probably won't last a day. Let's take bets. Kara hears them but doesn't react. They'll see soon enough. She closes her eyes, leaning her head back against the wall. She's been underestimated before. It's always the same story. Hours later, the scene shifts to the bustling common area. Aliens of all shapes and sizes fill the space, some towering and muscular, others grotesque and multi-limbed. The air is thick with tension, the unspoken rule being survival of the strongest. The weak don't last long here. In one corner, Gronak, Zyther, and Yaxa lounge at a table, their predatory eyes fixed on Kara as she walks through the room. Their laughter echoes across the space. She doesn't even know she's already marked, Yaxa says, her mandibles clicking in amusement. Humans always think they're clever, Zyther adds, his glowing veins pulsing faintly. Let's show her what happens when they're not. Gronak leans back, his massive arms crossed. His voice is deep and commanding. Not yet. Let her get comfortable. It'll be more fun to watch her fall when she thinks she has a chance. Across the room, Kara sits at a table alone, ignoring the stares and whispers. A small, timid alien named Zalvin approaches her cautiously. His tentacle-like appendages tremble as he sets down a tray of food. You shouldn't sit here, Zalvin whispers, his voice shaky. They're watching you? Kara glances up at him, her expression unreadable. Who's they? Zalvin glances nervously toward the gang in the corner. Gronak and his crew. They run this block. If they've noticed you, it's not good. Kara's gaze shifts briefly to the gang, then back to Zalvin. What do they want? Control. Power. They pick on anyone weaker than them. It's how they keep their status, Zalvin explains, his voice barely audible. You should stay out of their way. Kara picks up a piece of the strange alien food on her tray, examining it as if it's the most interesting thing in the world. Noted, she says simply, taking a bite. Zalvin hesitates, confused by her lack of fear. You don't get it. They've hurt people. Badly. You need to. Relax, Kara interrupts, her tone calm but firm. I've dealt with worse. Zalvin stares at her, unsure if she's brave or just naive. In the gang's corner, Gronak observes Kara with a smirk. She's not scared. I like that, he says, his tone laced with cruelty. It'll make breaking her more satisfying. Zyther grins, his glowing eyes narrowing. What's the plan? Public or private? Public, Gronak replies. She's new. We need everyone to see what happens when someone doesn't respect us. Yaxa chimes in, her voice sharp and eager. Let's start with her food. A little reminder that she doesn't own anything here. The gang rises, their massive forms cutting through the crowd as they head toward Kara. As Kara finishes her meal, she feels the room shift. The noise quiets slightly, and the energy around her changes. She looks up to see Gronak, Zyther, and Yaxa standing over her. Gronak reaches down, sliding her food tray across the table and onto the floor. The sound echoes through the room. This is our table, he says, his voice calm but menacing. You're sitting in our spot. Kara looks at the spilled tray, then back at Gronak. Her expression doesn't change. I didn't see your name on it, she says evenly. Laughter ripples through the room, but Gronak isn't amused. He leans in closer, his massive form casting a shadow over her. You don't get it, human. This is how it works here. You either give us what we want or we take it. Kara leans back slightly, her gaze steady. I don't think you'll like what happens if you try. The room falls silent. For a moment, the tension is palpable. Then Gronak's lips curl into a sinister grin. We'll see about that. As the gang walks away, the murmurs of the crowd grow louder. Whispers of curiosity and doubt fill the air. Kara picks up her tray from the floor unfazed and sits back down. It's clear to everyone watching, Kara isn't like the others. The prison cafeteria is alive with noise, alien voices shouting, trays clattering, and the occasional burst of laughter. The air smells faintly of something metallic, mixed with the unfamiliar sense of food from across the galaxy. Kara steps into the chaos, her posture calm, her expression unreadable. Eyes follow her as she walks to the serving line. Whispers ripple through the room. That's the human everyone's talking about. She doesn't look so tough to me. Gronak's going to put her in her place today. Kara picks up her tray, scanning the room briefly. She spots a small, empty table in the corner and heads toward it. The moment she sits down, the noise in the cafeteria dims slightly. All eyes shift toward the far end of the room, where Gronak and his gang are standing. Gronak smirks, his heavy steps echoing as he crosses the room. Zyther and Yaksa follow close behind, their expressions eager. Showtime, Zyther mutters, his glowing veins pulsing faintly. The gang approaches Kara's table, their towering forms looming over her. Gronak slams his hand down on the table, making the tray jump. "You're my spot," he growls. Kara looks up at him, her expression neutral. She doesn't respond immediately, instead picking up a piece of food from her tray and taking a bite. "Did you hear me, human?" Gronak's voice rises slightly, drawing attention from the other inmates. Kara finally looks at him, her gaze calm and steady. "You're standing," she says simply. Laughter ripples through the cafeteria, but it's short-lived. Gronak's grin twists into a snarl. He grabs Kara's tray and throws it to the floor, the contents scattering across the room. The cafeteria falls silent. "I'll say it one more time," Gronak growls. "You're in my spot." Kara stands slowly, her movements measured. She steps around the table, stopping just in front of Gronak. Despite the size difference, she doesn't seem intimidated. "You can have the spot," she says calmly. "But next time, ask nicely." The room erupts into laughter again, louder this time. Gronak's nostrils flare, his temper breaking. He swings a massive fist at Kara, aiming for her head. But she moves. With a speed that seems impossible, Kara sidesteps the blow, grabs his wrist, and uses his momentum against him. Gronak's massive body crashes into the table with a deafening thud. Gasps echo through the room. Zyther and Yaksa spring into action, but Kara is ready. She ducks under Zyther's swing, delivering a precise kick to his legs that sends him sprawling. Yaksa lunges with her sharp limbs, but Kara catches one mid-strike, twisting it just enough to make Yaksa cry out before shoving her back. The gang lies scattered on the floor, groaning. Kara adjusts her shirt and looks around the room. "Anyone else?" she asks, her tone calm. The cafeteria is dead silent. Inmates exchange wide-eyed glances, disbelief written across their faces. Kara picks up her tray from the floor, brushes it off, and walks to another table as if nothing happened. At the far end of the room, Zalvin watches in stunned silence. He wasn't sure if Kara was brave or foolish before. Now he's certain she's dangerous. Gronak's gang slowly rises, their pride wounded more than their bodies. Gronak glares at Kara's back, his fists clenched. "This isn't over," he mutters through gritted teeth. From somewhere above, the warden, Director Vorthal, observes through the prison's surveillance system. The AI's voice hums softly to itself. "Interesting. Perhaps there's more to the human than I calculated." As Kara finishes her meal, the room begins to buzz again, quieter this time. The hierarchy in the prison has shifted, and everyone knows it. The cafeteria incident spreads through the prison like wildfire. Whispers and murmurs follow Kara wherever she goes. Most inmates keep their distance now, their mocking replaced with cautious curiosity. But not everyone is content to let the human remain unchallenged. In the recreation yard, inmates gather in small groups under the watchful eyes of guards stationed above. The yard is a mix of uneven dirt, scattered alien vegetation, and makeshift workout equipment cobbled together from scraps. Kara leans against a wall, watching the activity unfold. Her gaze is calm, observant. Across the yard, Gronak and his gang sit in a tight circle. Zyther's glowing veins pulse erratically, his anger evident. "She humiliated us in front of everyone," Zyther hisses. "No one's going to respect us if we don't deal with her." Yaksa clicks her mandibles in agreement. "We can't just let this go, Gronak. She's making us look weak." Gronak's fists tighten, his claws scraping against the ground. "We'll handle her. But this time, we do it smart. No surprises. No mistakes." The gang begins to plot, their voices low, but laced with venom. Later that day, Kara is approached by Zalvin in the common area. His nervous movements make it clear he's struggling with whether or not to speak. Finally, he works up the courage. "You should be careful," Zalvin says, his voice barely above a whisper. Kara glances at him, her expression unchanged. "Why?" Gronak and his gang, they're planning something. They don't let anyone challenge them without revenge, Zalvin explains, his tentacle-like arms fidgeting. Kara leans back in her chair, considering his words. "What do you think they'll do?" Zalvin hesitates. "They've set traps before. They'll wait until you're isolated. Make an example of you." Kara nods, her calm demeanor unshaken. "Thanks for the warning." Before Zalvin can say more, a loud alarm echoes through the halls, signaling the transition to the next recreation period. The room empties as inmates file toward the yard. In the yard, the tension is palpable. Gronak and his gang stand near the center, their posture stiff, their eyes locked on Kara as she steps outside. She knows this is it, the moment they've been planning for. As Kara walks across the yard, the gang moves to intercept her, their movements deliberate. Gronak steps forward, towering over her once again. "You think you're tough, human? Let's see how tough you really are," he growls, his voice carrying across the yard. Inmates stop what they're doing, their attention shifting to the confrontation. The air grows thick with anticipation. Kara tilts her head slightly, her gaze steady. "I gave you a chance," she says calmly. "You didn't take it." Gronak roars and lunges at her. But Kara is ready. She sidesteps his charge, her movements fluid and precise. She grabs his arm and uses his momentum to slam him into the ground. The crowd gasps. Zyther and Yaksa leap into action. Zyther reaches for her, his glowing hands aiming to grab her neck. But Kara ducks and lands a sharp elbow to his ribs, sending him sprawling. Yaksa's sharp limbs lash out, but Kara evades each strike, her movements a blur of speed and control. She grabs a loose piece of metal from the ground and uses it to block Yaksa's next attack, disarming her with a sharp twist. The fight is over in moments. Gronak's gang lies defeated on the ground, groaning in pain. Kara stands over them, unscathed, her breathing steady. The yard erupts in murmurs, inmates exchanging shocked glances. Some begin to laugh, not at Kara, but at Gronak's humiliation. Later, back in her cell, Kara sits quietly, replaying the fight in her mind. She knows this isn't over. Gronak's gang isn't the only threat in this place. If anything, her actions have made her a bigger target. Above her, in the prison's control center, Director Vorthal reviews the footage of the fight. The AI's holographic form flickers as it processes the data. "Impressive," Vorthal muses. "Humans continue to surprise me. Perhaps there's more to this one than meets the eye." Vorthal sends a silent command to the guards, instructing them to keep a closer watch on Kara. The AI's curiosity is piqued. Over the next few days, Kara begins to notice changes in the prison. Inmates who once ignored her now approach her cautiously. Some ask for advice. Others offer subtle signs of respect. The balance of power is shifting. Zalvin, emboldened by her presence, starts spending more time with her. He shares stories of how Gronak's gang used to terrorize the weaker inmates, taking whatever they wanted without fear of retaliation. "You've given people hope," Zalvin says one evening. "They see you standing up to them, and they think maybe they can stand up too." Kara doesn't respond immediately. She leans back against the wall, her expression thoughtful. "Hope's a tricky thing," she says finally. "It's useful, but it also makes people reckless." Zalvin tilts his head, confused. "So what now? Do you take them all on?" Kara smiles faintly, the first sign of emotion since she arrived. "I don't need to take them all on, just the ones who think they can stop me." Meanwhile, Gronak's gang isn't done. They regroup in the shadows, licking their wounds and plotting their revenge. This time, their pride isn't the only thing driving them. Now it's survival. They know their position in the prison hierarchy is at stake, and they'll stop at nothing to reclaim it. As the tension builds, the stage is set for an even bigger confrontation. Kara has proven she's not to be underestimated. But in this place, nothing is ever truly settled. The recreation yard is quieter than usual. Inmates gather in clusters, whispering and glancing nervously toward the center of the yard. Something is different today. Something is brewing. Kara stands near the wall, her usual calm expression in place. Zalvin approaches her, his tentacle-like arms fidgeting with anxiety. "You shouldn't be here today," he says, his voice urgent. "What's happening?" Kara asks, her tone steady. "Gronak's made a deal," Zalvin explains. "He's brought in Drakner." At the mention of the name, Kara's gaze sharpens. "Drakner?" Zalvin nods quickly. "He's the strongest inmate here, genetically enhanced. No one's ever beaten him. He doesn't fight, he ends people." Kara doesn't flinch. She looks toward the center of the yard, where a massive figure begins to emerge from the crowd. Drakner is unlike anything she's faced before, over 7 feet tall, with thick, armored skin that gleams in the dim light. His eyes burn with a predatory intensity, and his movements are slow but deliberate, radiating confidence. Gronak stands beside him, his grin wide and smug. "You want to play with the big boys, human? Let's see how you handle this," he shouts, his voice carrying across the yard. The crowd parts, forming a loose circle around Kara and Drakner. The tension is palpable. Zalvin tugs at Kara's sleeve. "Please don't do this. You don't have to fight him." Kara steps forward, her expression unchanged. "If I don't, they'll never stop," she says quietly. Drakner stops a few feet away from Kara, towering over her. He tilts his head, studying her with amusement. "You're the one causing all this trouble." His voice rumbles like distant thunder. "That's what they tell me," Kara replies evenly. Drakner chuckles a low, menacing sound. "This won't take long." Without warning, he lunges. His massive fist swings toward Kara with the force of a battering ram. Kara dodges, her movements quick and fluid, but the sheer force of the swing sends a gust of air that ruffles her hair. The crowd gasps. Drakner doesn't pause. He turns with surprising speed for his size, his other arm swinging in a wide arc caradux, sliding under his arm and delivering a sharp kick to the back of his knee. Drakner staggers slightly, but recovers almost instantly. "Not bad," he growls. But not enough. The fight intensifies. Drakner's attacks are relentless, each strike powerful enough to crush bones. Kara evades most of them, using her agility and smaller size to her advantage. She strikes at his joints, aiming for weak points in his armor-like skin. But Drakner is tough. Her blows seem to have little effect. The crowd watches in stunned silence. Some inmates begin to murmur. She's holding her own. No one's ever lasted this long against Drakner. Drakner grows frustrated. His movements become more aggressive, his swings wider and less controlled. Kara uses this to her advantage, luring him toward a section of the yard with uneven ground. She maneuvers carefully, her steps calculated, until Drakner's foot catches on a hidden groove in the dirt. He stumbles, Just for a moment, but it's enough. Kara seizes the opportunity. She leaps onto his back, wrapping her legs around his torso and locking her arms around his neck. Drachner roars, thrashing wildly, trying to shake her off. But Kara holds on, her grip like iron. She drives her elbow into the base of his skull, a precise strike that sends a jolt through his body. Drachner staggers again, his movements slowing. Kara delivers another blow, then another. Finally, with a guttural growl, Drachner collapses to his knees. Kara jumps off, landing lightly in front of him. Drachner looks up at her, his breathing heavy, his expression a mix of disbelief and grudging respect. "Finish it," he mutters, his voice low. Kara shakes her head. "No, that's not how this works." She steps back, giving him space. The crowd is silent, every inmate frozen as they process what just happened. Drachner, the undefeated champion of the prison, has been beaten. And Kara didn't even need to kill him. Gronak watches from the edge of the circle, his smug grin long gone. He stares at Kara with wide eyes, realizing the balance of power has shifted irrevocably. The inmates begin to cheer, not for Drachner, but for Kara. Director Vorthal watches from the surveillance room, his holographic form flickering as he processes the data. Fascinating, he muses. The human is more than a survivor. She's a strategist. As the crowd disperses, Kara stands in the center of the yard, her breathing steady, her expression calm. Zalvin approaches cautiously, his eyes wide with admiration. You actually beat him," he says, his voice filled with awe. Kara glances at him. "I told you, they'd regret it." Zalvin nods, a smile breaking across his face. For the first time, he looks hopeful. Kara turns, heading back toward the building. Behind her, the whispers begin again. But this time, they're not mocking. They're filled with respect. And for the first time since arriving, Kara allows herself a small, satisfied smile. The prison is no longer the same. Kara's victory over Drachner has sent ripples through its walls. The once dominant hierarchy has shifted, and the fear that once ruled the inmates is giving way to something new order. In the days following the fight, Kara becomes a central figure. Inmates approach her for advice or simply to speak. She's not a leader by declaration, but her presence demands respect. Even the guards, once dismissive, now watch her with a mix of wariness and intrigue. In the common area, Zalvin sits beside Kara, his voice filled with wonder. "You've changed everything. Gronak doesn't scare anyone anymore. Even the weaker ones are starting to push back." Kara leans back in her chair, her expression calm as always. Sometimes, all it takes is for one person to push the right way. Zalvin hesitates, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But how? You act like you've done this before." Kara smirks faintly but doesn't answer. Instead, she stands and walks away, leaving Zalvin to wonder. Later in her cell, Kara sits cross-legged on the floor, her eyes closed. From a hidden pocket in her clothing, she retrieves a small, inconspicuous device. Activating it, she begins to transmit a silent message. "This is Operative Kara, reporting in. Phase 1 is complete." The faint hum of the device is the only sound as she continues. Prison hierarchy neutralized. Inmates destabilized, but responsive to reorganization. Evidence of illicit trade activities confirmed. Proceeding to Phase 2. She pauses, her gaze sharp as she considers her next words. "This facility is a powder keg. If Earth's forces move swiftly, we can dismantle the corruption at its core." The transmission ends. Kara hides the device and leans back against the wall, her expression thoughtful. She's not here by accident. Her capture was intentional, a mission to uncover the illegal operations running beneath the surface of the prison system. Meanwhile, Director Vorthal reviews surveillance footage in the control room. The AI's holographic form flickers, its voice murmuring calculations to itself. The human is unlike any other. Resilient, adaptable, dangerous. Vorthal pauses, accessing encrypted files on Kara. Her incarceration was no coincidence. She's here for a reason. The warden's hologram shifts, its tone carrying a hint of curiosity. Let's see what you're really after, human. In the yard, the atmosphere is different. Inmates now organize themselves under Kara's influence, forming a loose but functional system of mutual respect. The chaos that once defined the prison is fading. Zalvin watches Kara from across the yard, his admiration clear. She's not just surviving, he murmurs to himself. She's changing everything. The final scene cuts to Kara, standing at the edge of the yard. A small drone hovers near her, dropping a coded message in her hand. She opens it, her eyes scanning the text. The message is brief, but loaded with meaning. Stand by for extraction. The galaxy isn't ready for what comes next. Kara smirks, her gaze lifting to the sky. For now, she's still a prisoner. But soon everything will change.